America, and welcome to Civic Hall. We do our New America NYC events here, or many of our events, and we're very proud to be a Civic Hall partner. And this particular event actually marks a year of our doing events here, so it's particularly nice to be able to be back here. And to do what is, well, it's the second time, so we're going to now call it an annual event, which we're hosting a discussion on paid parental leave with the Royal Norwegian Consulate and the permanent mission of Norway to the United Nations. And New America has had a wonderful partnership with Norway over the past 18 months on a variety of issues, particularly around care issues and gender issues. So I just want to say a word or two about parental leave, and then I'm going to introduce our lead speaker, and then we'll go from there to the panel. So I wrote a book last year, and in this book, just by chance, I have a quote from Minister Horne's predecessor, who's a former Norwegian Minister of Children and Family, Valgard Haugland. And this is what he had to say a number of years ago about Norway's philosophy about family and paid leave. So he says, quote, "We have decided that the raising of a child is real work." Striking. So simple. It's real work, and that this work produces value for the whole society. Not exactly earth-shattering, but not generally stated by government officials. So he goes on to say, it is only fair then that, quote, that the society as a whole should pay for this valuable service. So raising a child is real work. It is work that is valuable for society. And if it is valuable for society, then society should pay for it, at least in terms of supporting the people who do it. So with that sort of basic proposition, that I think underpins the conversation about paid leave. And I will say paid family leave for children, for parents, meaning children who are taking care of their own parents, for any ill or disabled family member, anyone who needs care. That care, beyond children, provides value for society, and we should support it. And pretty much alone, the United States, as we know, has no maternity leave, for Papua New Guinea and a few other countries in that regard, no paternity leave, and no paid family leave at the federal level at all. We do have unpaid family leave, the Family and Medical Leave Act, but of course that is only for people who are in businesses who hire more than 50 people, and there are other restrictions, so effective, and that's unpaid, right? You keep your job, but you don't actually get paid. So when I travel in other countries, people look at me and say, what does your government expect? You know, the parents just sort of like have a baby and go back to work, the next week. How on earth can you possibly assume your children are going to be cared for? And I don't have a good answer. So we have people in the audience today who are fighting for paid leave. It is starting to happen at the state level. New Jersey has paid leave, Rhode Island, California, and at the city level. Washington, D.C. is passing paid leave right now. So we're getting there in our sort of laboratories of democracy way, but we have a long way to go. So with those reflections, I want to start by welcoming our star attraction of the evening, Her Excellency Solveig Horne, who is I absolutely love her title. I have to say, this says so much. Minister Horne is the Minister of Children, Equality, and Social Inclusion for the Kingdom of Norway. I just love the idea of children, equality, and social inclusion. She has been a member of Prime Minister Erna Solberg's cabinet since 2013. She has served in elected office since 1995 and was elected to the Norwegian Parliament in 2005 as a member of the Progress Party, and she's been re-elected for 2 consecutive terms. So, you know, in Norway, being a minister also means being an elected politician, unlike in our system. Of course, it depends. And in Norway, Minister Horning has championed a whole range of issues related to work, life, and family. Paternity leave policies, a cash benefit that allows parents and children to stay home together for longer when the child is an infant. And I particularly like this. This is maybe the only place the United States is ahead of Norway that I can think of, which is to adopt our custom of date night once a week so that parents can actually find time, in her words, to be lovers again. So I'm very supportive of that as well, although I can't tell you when the last time my husband and I had a date night. So Minister Horne is going to start with some remarks, and then we will turn to our panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for the kind introduction, and I almost forgot about the date night. And I remember I had been a minister for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then the media was talking about date night because I had a conversation with some the family counseling services, and they called me from the Guardian, and I think it was New York Times, and asked me, where did you get the idea from? Was it Obama? But okay, that's, thank you so much for inviting, once again, inviting me to New America's debate on gender equality. And let me just say to you that this debate is also high on the political agenda also in Norway, the parental leave. And also gender equality is a matter of equal opportunities. That's for both women and men to have the possibility of a fulfilling working life and at the same time be able to have a family life. And how can we balance this in the best way for both families and society? And this is a subject that keeps engaging because it concerns us, all of us. And tonight I will address how Norway has designed a family-friendly labor market policy for both men and women, and the children, and also our economy. Norway is often scored as one of the 3 most gender equal countries in the world on UN and other statistics. Gender equality has been a political goal since the early 1980s for all Norwegian governments, also for the present one. Last year I presented a white paper to Parliament on gender equality. Equality in practice, equal opportunities for women and men. This is a political document where the government lines up future policy in 5 crucial areas, including workforce participation. This is a topic I will touch upon tonight. But I also like to mention that I also about to present a white paper on family policies. Let me share with you some experience from Norway. But high female participation in the formal paid workforce has this side effects on a country's economic performance, as the Norwegian experience shows. Any country's main asset is its workforce. In Norway, even with our oil welfare, it's no expectation. In the last 50 years, there has been tremendous change in women's participation in paid work in Norway, more than in most other OECD countries. Labor market participation and paid work have been a key to economic independence for women. It has given women the possibility to develop and use their professional skills. Since the beginning of the 1970s, the labor participation rate has risen from 44% to 76% for women. At the same time, Norwegian women have had one of the highest fertility rates in Europe. In addition, to the benefit of all Norwegians today. 8 out of 10 mothers with small children are working. So how is this possible? First, the increase in female employment in Norway took place at a time when there was a rise in demand for labor, alongside a remarkable boost in women taking higher education. Secondly, we have invested in reaching full coverage of kindergartens at the subsidized price. In Norway today, 9 out of 10 children aged 1 to 5 years attend kindergarten. Kindergartens for all children of 1 year of age and older was made a statutory right in 2008. Affordable and high-quality kindergartens make it possible for both women and men to combine work and family life. Third, Norway has a generous parental benefit schemes and other schemes giving fathers and mothers a unique opportunity to combine work life and family life. The parental benefit schemes entitles parents to pay leave of absence in 49 weeks with 100% pay or 59 weeks with 80% pay. In order, I see you laughing.
Sounds like fairyland.
Yeah. But it's in Norway, so it's good. In order to encourage father also to be involved in care for their children, a father's quota of 4 weeks was established in 1993. Today, the quota is 10 weeks, and we know the quota has had a positive impact on the father's use of parental leave. Before the father's quota was introduced, only 2 or 3% of fathers took parental leave. When I had my first child in 1990, my husband had 1 day of parental leave. Today, we estimate that about 90% of fathers who have the right to this quota make use of it. In that sense, we have experienced a distinct change in man's attitudes. As a positive result, today it is common seeing fathers with their baby strollers as mothers, or men bringing and picking up their kids in kindergarten. Yet even my fellow minister, the Minister of Education, had parental leave when he recently had his first child. For self-employed men and women, it can still be difficult to make full use of their parental leave. It is also important that each family must be ensured flexibility and freedom to choose the solution that best suits them. We must also acknowledge that children and families are different and have different ways to solving their lives and their needs. Today the quota is 10 weeks each for both mothers and fathers. The rest of the total of 49 weeks can be shared as the family finds best. The main object of the parental leave is to give children the best start in life. It is a flexible scheme, a scheme that which the parents can make use of until the child turns 3. It is a main goal that both mothers and fathers can combine family and work life. That's why workers are entitled to work flexible and shorter hours and take pay leave if their child is ill. I would also like to challenge the employees to encourage male workers to make use of their rights to parental leave. I want to stress that these quite generous schemes first and foremost benefit the child. The child gets to have one of the parents at home with pay leave the first year. In addition, the father's quota ensures that both parents participate actively at an early stage of the child's life. This is valuable investment for the future for both the children and parents. It is good for the child to have two caregiving and engaged parents instead of one. It is good for the adults as both of them can experience professional fulfillment and at the same time have a caring and loving relationship to their child. Women's active participation in the workforce is the basis of our welfare state. Our welfare schemes may seem costly, I see that, but they simply ensure a sustainable future. As said, labor force participation in Norway is among the highest in the OECD for men, especially for women. One next step for Norway will be to find ways to encourage women to move from part-time to full-time work. With family provisions and childcare already in place, we believe that this is within reach. Each country must make their own way, and I hope that the experience we have made in Norway can inspire others to new solutions. What I do believe is that talents and abilities are equally divided between women and men all over the world. And giving girls and women the same access to education, jobs and leading positions as men, we make use of all society's talents and resources. And giving men the opportunity to be good fathers, the whole family will benefit, and we will give our children the best starting point in life. And that's our common goal, isn't it? Thank you.
Can we just please applaud one more time? And for the government of Norway for leading the way. We are going to now bring up a panel to have a conversation about very different perspectives on how this problem and possible solutions affects us here at home, in business, in public policy, and personally as parents. My name is Heather McGee. I'm the president of DEMOS. DEMOS is a public policy organization headquartered here in New York, just a couple of blocks away. We're very, very glad to be partnering with New America on this event, and very glad to have you, Anne-Marie, as always, leading the way in these conversations. DEMOS's mission is to create an America where we all have an equal say in our democracy and an equal chance in our economy. And that is why we have taken on the issue of paid family leave as a research issue. We have a set of reports that are actually here on the table as you leave, called Lagging on Leave, which is hot off the presses, that really finds an incredible situation here in New York, which is that 9 out of 10 workers in New York State have no paid leave from their employers. 9 out of 10. That's almost 6.5 million workers. The reason why we thought it was important to lift up that new number is that there is a fight going on right here, right now, at this very moment. Mayor Bill de Blasio led the way with as much authority as he could do to offer paid leave for municipal workers, 100% of pay. That happened just a couple of months ago, and we have late-breaking news that Governor Cuomo's proposal for a paid leave program that would be paid for by a payroll tax like they have in California, Rhode Island, and New Jersey has made it into both his budget and potentially the Republican budget as well. I know there are some people in the audience who are heavily engaged in that fight, so I hope in the Q&A we'll be able to learn how we can lend our voices. We have an incredible set of 3 leaders right now, each in their own way. We're going to engage in this panel conversation. But just before I invite them each to come up, I want to say that for us at DEMOS, this question of how we value our people, which is really, I think, the beautiful way that Minister Horn really brought it home for us, is paramount. Demos means the people of a nation, and it's the root word of democracy. And I often laugh when we as progressives at Demos, compare our social and economic policies to those of countries like Norway and Denmark and Sweden, and find ourselves very much lagging. We have to grapple with something very different in the United States, which is a multiracial, multi-origin, multi-ethnic Demos that is growing only more so by the day. And that fundamental question of, do we think that our greatest asset as a country is our workforce, is our people, are our families, is one that we are contesting every single day. And so when we look at public policy issues like paid family leave, like universal child care, like debt-free college, like high minimum wages and workers' rights protections across the board, we're talking about economic policy. But we're also talking about the fundamental notion of our social contract, which is at all times what we are deeply debating. And I think our presidential race right now and the incredible heat, anger, fear, and division that we are seeing being sown from the podium of someone from the highest office really calls that to the fore. So we're going to have a really beautiful, I think, conversation this evening about children, about families, about work, about public policy, and also about our future and who we are to one another. So I'd like to invite the panel up, please, without further ado. So I am joined here by three really remarkable people who are each going to give a pretty unique perspective on the topic this evening. We have Renee Wilson-Simmons, who is the director of the incredible National Center for Children in Poverty. If you have not engaged with NCCP's work, you are missing out. I encourage you all to follow her on Twitter, to go to their website for some of the most important research that is being done on these issues in America. We're also joined by Tom Alm, who's the Deputy Chief Auditor of DNB Bank ASA, which is a Norwegian-based bank, who's going to talk a little bit about his experience with Norway's parental leave policy. And then finally, here to my right is Amber Skora, who is a parental leave advocate here in New York City. And this is her first panel where she'll be speaking about these issues. So we'll be very encouraging and welcoming to her as she tells her story and we talk about the context here at home. So the first question I had was for you, Renee. You have been working on these issues for some time. You are able to bring a really national sort of synthesis to the conversation right now. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us, what is the situation here in the US right now? What do you think is the case for paid parental leave, and why don't we have it?
So those are all excellent questions. And I don't know if I can answer them succinctly, but I will say this, because we have a very specific perspective because we're the National Center for Children in Poverty. So we're really focused on the need to address paid family leave for that specific population. And it's great to hear what's happening in New York and DC, because there are, the District of Columbia and 19 other states introduced some type of paid family leave legislation in 2015 or this year, focusing on it, hoping that it happens, and some of them have already sort of introduced it, and we'll be reintroducing it because it's just not happening. So from our perspective as an organization that focuses on children in poverty, I think there are a couple of things we need to keep in mind. And one is that 15% of our population, that's 47 million people, are living at or below the poverty line. And there are 74 million children in the US, and 22% of them are living in poverty. So if you think about that for a minute, the youngest, the most vulnerable to risk of their health and development, and the poorest. And because we know that children do better when families do better, the question becomes, how do we support parents to support their children? And again, from the perspective of families in poverty, I think, unfortunately, there are continually negative perspectives about parents in poverty. It's why do you have so many children? That they're sort of reproductively prodigious, or they're financially inept, and they're in the situation they're in because they have made good decisions. And so it's not our responsibility as U.S. to take care of those families, it's their responsibility. And I think those are what we know about the importance of supporting families and children for the future of our nation tells us that we just have the wrong perspective.
Thank you, Renee. This question of who receives paid leave is one where you really see inequality come to the fore. Nationwide, the most highly paid quarter of the workforce is 4 times more likely to receive employer-provided paid family leave than the lowest quartile. College-educated workers are twice as likely to have access to paid leave as workers without a high school degree. There are racial disparities here as well. Can you talk a little bit, Renee, about the effect on children and children's development who are living in poverty, whose parents don't, and then whose parents do have paid leave?
Well, because there's so little data, because there are so few states. I mean, as you said, or maybe agreed, that there's only California and Rhode Island
In New Jersey.
and New Jersey. And we just, and when I say we, NCCP just completed a qualitative research study of parents in New Jersey to understand sort of what the experiences of those parents who actually took advantage of paid family leave and those who didn't. And I think there's some lessons from that we really need to look at, because it's not just about passing the legislation, it's about what the parameters of the legislation are, how much is truly covered, whether in fact access is truly there, how difficult it is to gain access, to understand it. Does that really help? Is it enough payment because it's only 2/3 and it's not a long period of time that you have paid family leave? All those questions, I think, as I mentioned, it's District of Columbia and 19 other states that are considering it, but we have to do more than just make sure we pass something. Because when we talk to those parents who actually took advantage of leave, it's still an issue of it wasn't enough time. I really needed this to bond with my child, but there wasn't enough time. The funds that I was receiving sometimes after I came back to work and had to borrow funds in order to make ends meet while I was on leave, it just wasn't enough. So the bonding with the child, being able to continue to breastfeed. So going back to work early, because the opportunities to truly bond and to nurture your child and to help them be all that they can be is limited because of the inadequacy of the length and the inadequacy of the funding that's available.
Thank you, Renee. These are very important questions right now. Literally, it is being debated exactly what the parameters of the New York state leave are. Tom, you were an advocate for parental leave, by that I mean fathers taking leave in Norway, even before the parental quota, the father's quota, the daddy law, I think it's called, the daddy quota. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience as a major executive in the financial sector? We are blocks away from Wall Street here in New York, and I think if we took a poll of how many traders on the street here in Wall Street actually took months of family leave, it would be a pretty small number. So please tell us a little bit about your experience.
Well, my daughter was born in 1990. I had 2 weeks paid leave right after birth. That's what we got. But for me, that wasn't enough. I wanted to spend more time together with her during her first year. So I got into discussions with my manager in the bank. He supported me, but we still together had to fight the HR department. So, after a while, they decided that it was a good idea. So I I got actually 1 month extra paid, and then I got 100% paid for that month.
Wait, just you?
Yes.
No, I mean as opposed to the your company.
And then what happened, Tom?
I'm sorry.
Back then, it wasn't regulated by the law. So if you didn't push it yourself, you didn't get it. So in 1993, our son was born. But then it has changed the law. Gave me 3 months with paid leave. So and for me that was so important to be able to take the responsibility as a father, and also to make sure that my kids got a very good start in life, to be there when they grow up, and of course to be present when they needed me, not when I had the spare time to play with them. So, and I also wanted to be, or try to be a good role model for my children.
And how now, many years into the policy, when just remarkable figures that Minister Holm gave, that 9 out of 10 fathers who have the right to take the quota are taking it, how has that changed life at the bank, for example, where you have your male colleagues taking time to be with their children? How has that affected the gender balance and opportunity in your workforce?
Well, it's actually so natural. And also, we don't talk about it because it's. I mean, when you become when you became a father now, you will have that time, because that time is something that if you don't use it during the first year or first 3 years, or when the child is at that age, you lose a lot, will not be able to bond with them. I mean, it's like, for me, when I look at some of my colleagues in other financial institutions here in the US, you can see that they, even if they want to stay at home, and even if their company give them the possibility to stay at home with a fine policy and so on, they don't dare to take it, because it's that is the same as saying that you actually don't want to succeed in this company. And I think that is so narrow-minded by management, because in the human capital in the company, that is actually the only value asset that you have. So if you take the human capital out, you have nothing. So it's, I think it's also important because I think you need to have a kind of change of mindset, both by the employees but also by the employer. The employees must dare to speak out and stand up for their rights, and the employers must be willing to give them that opportunity. And I think for me and for the managers that I have had during all my years working for the bank, for them it has been an investment in the employees, because they know if they invest in the employees that way, they will get loyalty, flexibility, and hard-working people. So, I mean, it's only upside for both parties.
Only upside. Only upside for both parties. Fantastic. Thank you so much I will say that early research has found that in California, the retention of particularly low-paid workers who are able to use the paid family leave disability insurance increased. I think that's very important, that the idea of people who, from the business perspective, people who have to very much choose between being able to make rent and take even just a sick day off. I mean, we are living in a country where there's no mandated paid sick days, not even a single one, and that is a fight across the country, particularly for low-paid workers. It has actually affected retention at low-wage firms. So now we're going to hear a very personal story from Amber, who has become a paid leave advocate despite, I think, herself, and didn't set out to be. And I just want to hear your story of how you became an advocate and how other parents sort of responded to your story and pushed you into this role.
Well, first of all, what the circumstance that led to me being deciding to take up this issue was that my son died on his first morning at daycare. I can't hear you. Anyways, so unlike, to tell further about more background of the story, unlike most people in America, I actually did have a paid maternity leave, a short maternity leave, and when I say short, by Norwegian standards it would be considered short, but by American standards it would be considered very long, and that was 3 months. Right from the time that my son Carl was born, I felt uncomfortable with the idea of leaving him. I mean, obviously when he was a newborn, it was my first experience being a mother. But from the first weeks of his life, I started to really dread that looming date of knowing I would have to go back to work. So, in general, being pretty good at creative problem solving, my partner Lee and I were discussing all the time, like every week or every day, different options, like how we could make it work. And like most families in America, there was not really the option of having just one income, especially I think living in New York City. And so that was kind of compounded by the fact that I was the one that had the health insurance in our family. So my son was on my health insurance. So I found, like, in my short experience being a parent, that very often felt like a juggling act, and you were trying to always juggle all your responsibilities in the best possible way for your child, but also being financially responsible and responsible for his care and all of that type of thing. So I had asked my employer a few times if I could have more time off without pay, maybe pay my own health insurance or something, because we could manage financially for a few months to just tide it over until going back to work. But I was told that there was no way that was possible, and that the only option would be to quit. So of course I did weigh that option, but ultimately it didn't seem like the most responsible thing to do, and I had a job at a children's book publisher, and so they were pretty family friendly, so it seemed like a pretty bad thing to give up that job and be in the position of being unemployed in a couple months and having to pay childcare and look for a job again. So I was already quite, both my partner and I were quite worried about going back to work, but ultimately we made the choice that we did, because also most of the mothers I knew had much less time than I had, and certainly I never envisioned that my son's safety would be at risk. I didn't think that was what the stakes were. So I chose a daycare that was quite close to my work, just 2 blocks away, and I would still go see him and go breastfeed him during the day, like every few hours. But the first day I was back at work, we dropped him off at daycare, and I returned at noon to find the daycare worker performing CPR. And no, they couldn't tell, the medical examiner could not tell what the cause of death was. So almost, I mean, of course there was a lot of shock and trauma involved, but one of the first, I don't know, lucid thoughts maybe I had was a conversation that my partner Lee and I had, where we were just like, we couldn't help but feel that the direct relation of this angst about going back to work, leaving our son, and having him die. Of course, we don't know that if he had been with me, it would have been any different, but at least he would have been with me, which was where I wanted him to be, and I wouldn't have this question of whether it was because someone didn't notice something was going wrong or something like that. So what I did at that point, as a couple months went by and I was able to think a little more clearly, I started to just research other women's stories, just to kind of get a sense of if I was alone in this feeling like this was wrong, that we had no opportunities or had no options at that point in our son's life. And I started to, of course, read all the stories that you read online about women who had to go back to work after 2 weeks, still not recovered from surgeries. There was like the story of a woman who had, her baby was on oxygen at 4 weeks old, and the boss was understanding and would let her bring the baby in to be breastfed a few times a day by the mother-in-law. And as I read the stories, I started to actually feel a little bit guilty, as in like, who am I to complain? I had 3 months, because so many women have suffered so much, and maybe the outcome wasn't as tragic, but still I almost started to doubt myself and feel like I was the lucky one, and then I was like, no, my son died, it's the worst possible scenario. So I started to think about the way that our culture kind of devalues our children or the caregiving of our infants so much that even as parents ourselves, we sometimes start to feel bad or feel that we shouldn't speak up and ask for more time or question these things. So the next step was, what do I do about this? I mean, I have no experience as an activist. I don't have any organizations that I have worked with. But I had been taking a class that was talking about the progressive era, and I found it really inspiring because I noticed the obvious parallels, where at that time, our society, the early 1900s, women couldn't vote, but corporations really sort of like were dictating government policy, and there was a lot of social problems. There was no welfare for children, there was food safety issues. And what I found kind of heartening, being not very organized myself, was that at that time, there wasn't a lot of organization, but a lot of women especially just acted. They just did what they could. Everyone just, whatever voice they had, they used it to push forward one of these issues that maybe happened to fall in their lap or that they noticed. And in the end, that power of people writing, talking about it, maybe they had handles back then, ended up causing a lot of change to happen. So that was why I decided to write an article that eventually was published in the New York Times that basically talked about this experience and called for parental leave.
Thank you so much, Amber. That is, I think many of us in this room, particularly if we're here in New York, remember reading Amber's story and hearing about it and being deeply heartbroken. And of course, so many parents lose their children in our country, but so few of them make that private pain into a public cause. So I really just want to applaud you for being an advocate for this issue and for parents everywhere. So thank you. So I really want to open this up to conversation and questions now, because I'm sure there's a lot that are on your hearts and minds at the moment. So yes, okay, so I think that there is going to be a mic coming. Yeah. So the first question is right here. And if you wouldn't mind just identifying yourself, keeping your question brief so that everyone can have a chance who wants one, and then also making it a question, not a speech.
Okay, I'll do my best. Amber, everyone in the audience, I think is grateful that you were able to use that very tragic experience to mobilize others. So thank you for that. I guess my question is about the connection between the U.S. and the New York high maternal and infant mortality rates and the racial disparities, which may in fact be somewhat connected to the low-wage workers not even having a day off. And low-wage workers not having the time to breastfeed. That's why I would argue for at least 6 months. But the health imperative, I would like you to talk about.
Renee, do you want to take that?
Sure, and the issue of breastfeeding is, as I said, no, we completed the qualitative research doing focus groups and interviews with parents in New Jersey who were eligible for paid family leave and took it, and those who were eligible and did not. And for those who, in both categories, this issue of the need to breastfeed and adequate time to do that was at the top, was the real issue. That and the bonding. And we know the importance of breastfeeding, but if in fact you have so little time off and you have to go back to work and you're in working situations where you can't even pump and you certainly can't bring your child, then there's a tendency not to do it at all. And so it's a huge issue. And I think when we're talking about pushing forward paid family leave, we have to think about how much time is really an appropriate amount of time and really push for it, as opposed to what I am tending to hear will say is, well, we just want to get something. And getting something is something, but it's not enough.
And on that getting something question, one of the major fault lines often in the policy design as legislators in the United States, legislators are very solicitous of at least the perceived interest of business, and the idea that we don't want to burden small businesses, right? So like with the National Family and Medical Leave Act, there's often a debate about whether or not there should be a size threshold for employers, as if the children of parents who work at small employers are somehow more resilient and able to not be taken care of by their parents than ones who work at large employers. And that often also has, as well, the issue of how long an employee has to have worked there, the part-time status. These are the details that really do make a difference in the lives, particularly of parents of color and low-paid workers, because oftentimes those with not long tenure who are younger and of course at their prime childbearing age are those who really need the benefit. They're working for smaller companies and they are not able to get even the guaranteed family leave. And right now what we are hearing here in New York is that in the Republican budget they want to carve out smaller employers. So that is definitely going to be a fight. Yes.
Thank you. I think that last point was really pertinent, particularly to me. I had the benefit of being someone who worked in the state of New Jersey and moved to Germany 6 months before I gave birth. And so I had the benefit of having New Jersey's very generous maternity leave policy and also being the beneficiary of 1 year paid medical leave in Germany. However, what I experienced was that while my company, I realized at 3 months, I thought I was ready to go back after 6 weeks as a very career-focused woman. I wasn't ready to go back after 6 weeks. I wasn't ready to go back to after 3 months. And quite frankly, I really needed that 1 year and I breastfed until 17 months. At that point, having conversations with people in Germany, particularly women, is that with the 1 year paid, 3 year guaranteed job back, it actually had a negative effect on career-focused women in the workforce. So where do we strike that balance between how do you offer women and men for maternity and paternity leave the opportunity to create that opportunity for bonding, for appropriate breastfeeding, but also make it economically feasible, not only for small businesses, but mid-sized businesses. And in my case, I was working for a Fortune 500 company. How do you make that business case for getting them back in the workforce, creating that, that bridge for a 1 year or longer maternity leave and making it beneficial to everyone? Because I think that's a really, really difficult balance to strike. Maybe in Norway, they've mastered that. Certainly in Germany, that's not the case, where there is significant gender disparity because of the very generous maternity leave policies.
And I'm not familiar, does the German law have a quota for fathers as well? I'm sure it's not a year or 3 years.
Actually, it's one or the other. So the father can take the leave or the mother can take the leave. Only one of them gets paid for the first year, but there is that you are not guaranteed your specific job when you come back, but you're guaranteed a place within the company when you return. And oftentimes what I've heard is that if you don't come back within that 12-month period, you are offered a job, but it may not be at the same level or qualification or the specific job set that you left with.
Do you want to talk about
I think no matter what kind of solution you end up with, that is a challenge that you will face. How to deal with it? I know that very much of the debate in Norway these days are regarding equal rights and equal opportunities for a career for the women. So, because I think we must be that honest to say that we face this kind of situations or problems or challenges in Norway as well. But I don't think it's any quick fix on how to get the best solution for both the corporates and the employees and to get women back on the track in the career. That's a difficult question.
Do you want to, I saw you whispering over there, do you want to weigh in here?
I'm not sure if I can answer the question, but we have a law in Norway that say that you should have the same job after you're coming back from the parental leave. So it's not possible for the employees to give the job that you had before to another. So that's a guarantee, and that I think that's also one of the strong discrimination legislation that we have in Norway, that it's illegal to discriminate women or men because of the pregnancy or also the breastfeeding. You are allowed to do that also. But it's a good question, so because we need that women can make career too, and I think that that father is participating in are taking the quota, and that they can also. If fathers should take the quota in Norway, the mother has to go back to be in activities in the work. So that's also some of the Scandinavian, use that way to also to solve that women need to go back to in the workforce. They cannot take the weeks together all the time.
Okay, other questions? Yes, back there and then in the front.
In the United States, we often talk about other countries, but we're also a nation that doesn't like to look at the rest of the world. You know, we have this exceptionalism. So I guess my question is, how do we make the case to policymakers? I think we also have a very different ethos in the United States. I think it has to be an economic case. So that's my first question, is how do Americans make this case? And two is, I'd like to know more about some of the mechanics of it, the take-up rate based on the cap on replacement of salary, because I know that data shows that men, even in European countries, are not taking up paid leave opportunities if they're not in line with what they need to make. And this, of course, for their families, and this, of course, affects gender equality.
So I will say that requiring employers to offer paid leave is actually enormously popular in the United States among voters. even though it is not apparently very popular among our legislators. It is overwhelmingly popular among Republican voters. The Family Act, which is the federal paid family leave law, gets, I think, 5 out of 10, so 55% of Republican women support it. It is one of those issues where there's just a massive gulf, not between left and right, but between sort of inside the halls of power and outside the halls of power. I do think the fact that California and New Jersey, a Demos fellow named Sharon Lerner did a great report about the business experience in New Jersey of paid leave. There are great reports about the California experience. Employers overwhelmingly find no administrative burden or paperwork or employee disincentive, and there are even those benefits to very high turnover workers and industries as well. So there is a business case to be made. There is a bipartisan case to be made. We know that because of our inequalities of voice in our democracy, whether it's campaign finance, lobbying, or the structural gaps in who is registered to vote, that unfortunately organized business just has a much louder voice in policymaking than working in middle-class families. That's where we are today, both at the state level and at the federal level. So I think you're seeing that more than the idea that there's not an empirical business case or that it's actually so polarized among voters. I do want to have someone answer your question about the replacement rate. I'm going to just say what I think I know is that in Norway it's 80 or 100% of pay, and that obviously is a massive incentive to actually use the program. I promised someone over here. Yes.
Oh,
go ahead.
Thank you. For a little bit of background, I run an agency that fills parental leaves via a network of freelancers. And so I'm working with a lot of the trailblazers who already have parental leave policies or announced them last year, because 18 companies last year announced new paid parental leave policies. But what I'm finding out, which is interesting, because I see the light at the end of the tunnel that this is going to happen. But what's interesting is they have these policies, but they don't have these systems in place to support them, which in particular affects their coworkers, and then also when they come back from work. So I'm curious what the panel has to say about, okay, when we get paid parental leave, what else do we need to support it, to make it something that everyone supports, whether they have children or not.
I think back to what I said about changing the mindset. As a guest in the US, I should be very careful about giving critics to the country.
It's okay.
It's a little bit about not always thinking about me and I, but thinking about me and
That's
us.
too far.
I mean, if you look at it, most of us get children when we are in the 30s. Then we still have like 30-35 years in the work lifetime again. So for me personally, I don't understand why people can put their career on hold for a year or two. You still have more than 30 years to make that career and make it happen. Because if it's a meaning that you should have a career, you will have it. So you have to contribute with something. You have to give something. So of course, for many people it will be hard to accept, to take that step back. But if you don't take it, well, you want to get any further with this question. So and it's a little bit also, I mean, if you decide to have a child, why do you want to outsource it after a couple of weeks? Then why should the child have any bonds to you? You're just another stranger like any other. So it's, I don't see the logic.
Well, yes, let's leave it on that one. All right,
I was also thinking about what Tom said, how now no one even talks about maternity leave because it's just a norm. And it's kind of like, I mean, we have vacation days at work and nobody thinks about that with a lot of angst. I think that eventually what happens, it just becomes part of the culture and people adapt. That's what humans do. And businesses form, such as the business you mentioned, where people fill the niches and the needs that arise as a result of parental leave. But I think that there's plenty of examples, like the whole world has parental leave and it works. So we might be really worried about the details, but we have a lot of people we can ask how to manage all of that.
Right, Renee, you want to jump in?
So I feel like I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight because all I'm thinking about is Norway and what kind of programs they have there. And we're so far from it. We're so far from it that the question becomes, what is it that we can achieve that's achievable? And I'm not one to say, oh, you know, let's do the best we can, but what's reasonable and what's achievable and what can we show the public really is going to make a difference. And in terms of, and again, I have to speak from the perspective of low-income parents who also want to have families. But you can't make the decision that I'm going to take the time off because at least as the program exists in New Jersey, first of all, you get very little time, and secondly, you only get 2/3 of your pay. And that's part of the reason that the majority of parents who take it in New Jersey are women, because they have to take it. I mean, they want to, but I mean, you have to. You have to take at least some of it because you're going to have the child. For men, at least the few that we've had in our focus groups, they can't afford to do that. You know, they would only make 2/3 of their salary. They feel like the mother should take it. If anyone's going to take it, she should. But neither one of them can afford to take some long period of time. And unfortunately, because of the lack of sort of promoting its availability, many of those who took it, it was quite a struggle to even learn about it and learn there was access to it. And for many of them that we did focus groups with who didn't take it, the first time they ever heard of it was in a focus group. So we ended up having to, because we realized that we were off topic, because they were asking questions about a program and could you look at because they were saying, oh, it's nice if the employer gives it to you. It's not even something the employer gives you. You're paying for it. So I think that there are all kinds of issues about the way in which it's presented, the way in which people understand it, that enables them to even take it and take advantage of it. So that's one thing. And the other piece of it is, based on the number of states that are considering it, what can we learn that can make it better for those that are trying to move forward?
So Anne-Marie wants to weigh in.
I just wanted to say two things about how we can normalize it. I'll stand this way. That I think are particularly helpful. One is that all managers are required to have extended coverage plans. So at least in many corporations, if you're a manager, part of being a good manager is having a succession plan. The argument is, you know, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, who's going to take over? And if you haven't done that, then you're not doing your job. And extended coverage is the same idea, that if anybody in your workforce, something happens, and obviously it could be a child, it could be an accident, it could be anything, you need to figure out with your team how that's going to be covered. So that's one. And the other is, again, this is not just children, right? I always say you can choose, or not, but you can better choose whether or not to have children. You can't choose whether or not to have parents. And so you just emphasize, okay, you know, you may be picking up more now, but someday you are likely to have that responsibility.
All right, so, what's that, you're saying fine?
Oh, no, I was actually having.
You want to question?
Hi. So I just wanted to come back actually to the question that the lady here in the second row made. When I was preparing for this event, I read a great deal of data on maternal and child mortality and how it's dropped actually. I read Norwegian studies as we're working in Norway, but it's our infant mortality rate is 3 times higher than it is in Norway. Our maternal mortality rate, we're the only country in the OECD where it's actually on the rise. And parental leave, paid leave, has been found to have really dramatic effects on just, these very basic things. And so I wanted to sort of note that, but also to ask maybe Renee, if you could just sort of expand a little bit on sort of the impact that the lack of paid leave has on lower income families and on the decisions they have to make about childcare, their ability to bond with children, parental stress, and the effects that has on the health of their children. I know we've done work that showed, that workers who don't have paid leave are less likely to take their children to the doctor, they're less likely to go themselves. But on the effect that has throughout childhood and adolescence, those upheavals can have, and the way that perpetuates some of the inequalities that we see in this country.
Well, I can't really make the association between paid family leave or not and some of these health and development issues because, as I said, we don't have, there are so few places that have paid leave in the U.S. and the programs are different in those 3 states that do, and we're just not collecting the kind of data that would enable us to say something in a definitive way about it. But I will say this, that when we do the kind of qualitative research that we did in New Jersey to get at more than the numbers and sort of understand the kinds of issues and difficult decisions and that poor families have to make when what's available to them just isn't enough, are the kinds of things that we can then learn enough about to try to do the kind of research on that would enable us to say some things that have strong associations. I just can't, based on what we know now, say I can point to research that would tell you that. Now, I could point to research around issues of maternal depression and the high rate of maternal depression among poor women as opposed to the general population. Rates of maternal depression are as high as 50 to 60% in samples of poor families with children. And we know there's a connection between maternal depression immediately after pregnancy and some of the issues that we're hearing from women who didn't have paid family leave, couldn't stay away long, those that did but still couldn't stay away long. And we can make some kind of sort of guesses about what that means, but we can't make clear associations.
Are there organizations here in the U.S. that are looking at comparative data from countries that have enacted paid leave policies? The Norwegian studies were, longitudinal studies looking at families before and after paid leave, and they actually found that looking at the same populations, controlling for everything, that children after paid leave was enacted, they had, fewer behavioral problems in school, lower rates of teenage pregnancy. Do these things surprise you that have far-reaching effects?
No, not at all. But in terms of what we're looking at and what the research is telling us about the U.S. and the parallels with other countries, those countries are so different that we can't make those kinds of comparisons. We can just say what's happening in those countries and how much better it is there. But when I hear what those programs are, I come back to that same question of what's going to be possible here. Let's be realistic about it. We want a good outcome, but what is it that we need to push for that we truly believe is going to happen?
Amber, you want to?
I was just thinking along the lines of Catherine's question, is just that I think this is why we come together and why we have Norway. We can learn, children are the same in Norway as they are in America. And I think that it's true we don't have like the exact same ability to study since we don't have that kind of benefit. But we can certainly see from those Norwegian studies that it does have a real effect on outcomes for children the longer the paid leave goes on. So I think that's something that maybe we can use is the fact that it doesn't matter what country children are from, their development is still affected in the same way by having their primary parent with them.
I do want, we're winding down in terms of time. If there's anyone in the audience who wants to give a little advertisement for what people in the room can do to help advance paid family leave in New York. Yes?
Hi, I'm Nancy Mankin. I'm Director of Research at Community Service Society and on the steering committee of the New York State Paid Family Leave campaign. And so I actually had a question, and it's a question for all of you, the entire audience. And that question is, what are you going to do tomorrow? Because paid family leave, whether you get it or not as a New Yorker, is going to be determined by our state legislature in the next 3 weeks, by the end of March. Now, the governor has put forward a proposal that would cover all workers, all size businesses. It's 12 weeks. It has job security. And notice that New Jersey and California, their paid family leave don't have job security. It has 2/3 wage replacement, and it includes not just parental leave, but family leave to care for a seriously ill family member with a broad, inclusive definition of family. So what is critical is that our legislators and the governor's office need to hear from all of us, particularly the leadership of the Senate, the Republican leadership, because everyone has now agreed that New York should have paid family leave. There are proposals in both the Assembly and the Senate and in the governor's executive budget, but the question is the details. And every one of those is at risk from the Republican Senate. So
Is there a website that folks can go to?
Yes, you can go
Haven't
to.
contacted your legislator, you don't know what to say.
You can do it by contacting, you can look at our website at cssny.org and the paid leave part. You can, AARP also has a call-through number that'll patch you into your senator. You can talk to me afterwards. But the next 2 or 3 weeks are absolutely critical.
And I want to give a shout out to Nancy and the Community Service Society because her organization, as well as the Center for Women in Work at Rutgers University, New Jersey Citizen Action, Statewide Parent Advocacy Network, and Advocates for Children of New Jersey were all partners in this project that we did to try to learn how to improve the program in New Jersey.
Unfortunately, we're running low on time, so I'd love to just hear final few sentences from each of our panelists, and then they will be here over wine, I know. Unfortunately, I think Amber can't partake, which is very, very exciting. Okay, so Renee, do you want to start just closing thoughts?
Yeah, so closing thoughts. Now, I have this binder up here because I wanted to be able to share some words from some of the participants in the program who talked about the importance of the program to them. So I will try to find the positive, because a lot of what I found here was about how the program could be improved, how they can learn about access, what will be better, but that all, in terms of the group who were part of the program, are saying that it made such a difference to them. It enabled me to bond with my child. It gave me the time I needed, not all the time I needed, but enough time that I really felt that there were some important connections I made to my child. That my husband continued to work, and it would have been nice if he had an opportunity to spend some time with with our child as well. So those who took it said it made a world of difference to them. They just wished it would be a longer program, and they with a higher percentage of coverage of their income when they're off.
Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you for the work that you do. Tom, parting words?
Just want to give an advice to all the men that are planning to be a father. When I was born, my parents were very young. My mother was 17, my father was 19. They didn't have much money, so they rented a small apartment, actually only one room. My bed was next to the record player, and my father was a huge Frank Sinatra fan. So I grew up with Frank Sinatra. So he was one of my closest friends. And he has actually given in one of his songs, it's called Soul Liquid. There he gave the script on how to become a great dad, how you should bond with your kid, and how you should love and care for your child. It's was first recorded in 1963. It's 8 minutes long, but it's well worth of both. Watch it up on YouTube. There you can see old Blue Eyes when he delivered the speech. That is one of my favorite songs, and it has meant so much to me when I was my kids.
Thank you, Tom.
I guess I would just like to say that I think that it can be very discouraging in the current political climate to feel like this is such a left-right issue, and I try and always think of it this way, that in the entire world, except for here and in Papua New Guinea, there's all different kinds of political systems and philosophies and ideologies, but in all of these different countries, people can agree that this issue it transcends politics, that our children are important enough, and this is important enough that we give them this time with their parents. So I think that the key is for us as individuals not to just sort of give up, but there are ways, as the lady mentioned, to lobby our government. We can't just give up because the businesses have so much power. We have a lot of power too. If anyone wants to make it easy to lobby their representatives at the federal level, we have a website that we made called forcarl.com, and you can go there and put in your zip code and easily send an email, a tweet, or call your representative and just tell them your support. And it doesn't have to be parental leave. You can put in whatever it is that you want to support, but just don't forget to contact your representatives, because that's what we can do.
Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking the panel and thanking you.